Thank you for joining us in today's Connection Point End Times News Briefing podcast. Hope you're all doing well and having a wonderful and blessed day. Before we jump into today's update, I'd like to take a moment just to exhort you to stay and keep focused on the Lord and stay in His Word. Again, we're living in very difficult, challenging, tough times, and so we need to be grounded in the Word, grounded in the Lord as much as possible, and know that He is our only source of hope in this world. And so it's so easy to get distracted, preoccupied, anxious, worried, and even feeling this apprehensiveness with all that's going on around us, just this unsettledness, lack of peace, if you will. We all have our daily battles and issues that we have to deal with and navigate through, and I found that the more I'm praying and reading the Word and doing my devotion, seeking the Lord, the less overwhelmed and stressed out I feel. I know we all know this personally, but it's good to be reminded of this. Amen? Now on to some news items. There's three particular news items just to bring to your attention. The first one came out of the Reuters website. There's many others that carry the same similar type of article that talks about from the president of Iran saying on Monday that Iran's missile program is a non-negotiable, and that he goes on to say that the U.S. President-elect Joe Biden is well aware of it. Biden's victory has raised a possibility that Washington could rejoin the Iran deal with the world powers from 2015 with the nuclear deal that they had at that time. And he appears to see a return to the prelude to widen talks with Iran's nuclear work, its ballistic missiles, and regional activities. But Tehran has ruled out halting its missile program or changing its regional policy instead of its demanding changing in U.S. policy, including lifting sanctions and compensation for the economic damage caused by the U.S. withdrawal from the nuclear accord. That withdrawing from that particular deal was one of President Trump's best decisions that he's made as president. Again, the nuclear deal was one of the worst deals in history. It just gives Iran more development for their nuclear and ballistic weapons, and giving them the financing for it. And so the Iran regime can't be trusted with its nuclear weapons. And so they're a threat to every country around them, especially Israel. And when we talk about this, there's always that development that you're thinking through in the Ezekiel 38 war scenario. So we see what's going on there. We always need to keep in mind Iran's end game, which was to invade Israel or wipe it off the face of the map, which we know is not going to happen. But the Ezekiel 38 will be joining in with Russia, which we know that it's ultimately going to be stopped by the Lord. Anyways, we're going to continue to see the weapons development in Iran, and if Biden, gets into office as president, he's going to support that and help fund the nuclear weapon for Iran. Speaking of Iran, again, there's a report that came out from the U.S. State Department, and part of that report that mentions and how Iran's global campaign of terror has included almost 360 target assassinations in other countries, mass bombing attacks that killed and maimed hundreds. So again, you can see the collateral damage all over with the Iran regime. On to another major news item, which tragically we see the Electoral College formalizes Biden's win. Trump team not giving up legal fight, calling alternate electors. And so the election college had spoken and voted in all 50 states in Washington, D.C. on Monday to make Joe Biden the winner of the 2020 presidential election. He's now become the president-elect after receiving 360 electoral college votes, which unfortunately most of those actually should have gone to Trump instead of Biden because he cheated in those states, but compared to Trump's 300 or 223. So on Monday night, following the electoral college votes that were counted, Biden blasts Trump for continuing to contest the election results. If the shoe was on the other side and, the tables were flipped, they would be doing the same thing. Anyways, the court sent a clear message, as Biden goes on to say, that President Trump is not to be part of an unprecedented assault on our democracy. So again, it's the same speech that called for spirit of unity and healing, which again, it's only when it suits them. And integrity of our elections remain intact, and now it's time to turn the page, as we've done throughout history, to unite and heal. How come they didn't do this 4 years ago? Now they have this, peace and healing rhetoric, but they didn't do that for the last 4 years. And so anyways, Trump and his team have yet to concede, as though they'll continue to pursue their courts and case in court. The only date in the Constitution is January 20th, according to senior advisor to the president, Stephen Miller, who told Fox News. So we have more than enough time to right the wrong. Also, according to the CBN political analyst David Brody, said that even though that the Electoral College still voted, it's not technically official. So Monday, the Networks of Faith program, he explained that the state legislators send their own list of electors to Congress. So technically, U.S. Congress has to certify the vote January 6th. And that's what Trump's campaign is hoping that will happen, that the legislators will send dual electors, and at that point the House and the Senate will have to figure it out. Monday, some of the legislators sent separate slate of electors, and several states that contested. Republican electors cast their ballots for Trump in case he wins his case in the courts. And so far, the few Republicans have conceded that Biden won the election, and Trump's defenders contend his voters deserve to see their concerns taken seriously. And as we mentioned before, if Biden, if he quote-unquote won this fair and square, which we know he didn't, but if he did win it fair and square, fine. They'll accept it. We'll move on. Just like we did with Obama, who was an absolute disaster, one of the worst presidents in U.S. history. But it's sickening to see this taking place from election night till even today. Because the facts, the evidence proves that Biden and the Democrats was a stolen, fraudulent election. The amount of irregularities, illegal votes and ballots, the errors, the manipulated votes that switched from Trump to Biden from the Dominion system. You see the millions and millions of fraudulent Xerox copied ballots only for Biden. The removal of poll watchers to keep accountability and checks and balances to see what's going on, and you see how some of these poll people there were marking, the ballots as they were coming in, checking who they wanted as president. And the amount of videos and testimonies that how the Democrats have cheated and stole the election. And of course, mainstream media is not going to investigate. They'll say, it's a fair election and there's nothing to see here, because they're all Democrats and they're all in the pockets of these politicians, as with the mainstream media and social media platforms. They've covered up. They lied to keep people in the dark. And it's sickening to see how much deception is going on and how Biden is getting away with it. And if he does happen to get into office, that's pretty much the end of the U.S. and the U.S. elections, because if they got away with it now, they're going to do it in the future, so there's no point in having elections in the future when they're just going to lie, cheat, and manipulate the system and change your votes. So this is there's this huge cover-up here, and it's also based on all the censorship and the removal of videos and content online, because it's shedding light on the issue. Just the same thing that happens with COVID. When you share the facts and the truth of what's going on, they remove that stuff. They don't want people to understand what's really going on. There is still a chance, again, Lord willing, that Trump will win this battle. And if the Supreme Court actually looks at all the facts and evidence of it, there's no way that Biden should get in. Anyways, it's just another tragic day in U.S., to accept this fraudulent, election, votes for Biden. And but regardless of all this, God is still in control. He's still sovereign. Our hope and our trust is in the Lord, not in our government or politicians or anyone else. The last item to bring clarity on, because there's a lot out there that are panicking or they're led to believe that the COVID vaccine is the mark of the beast or that it alternates your DNA. And that's just not true. As you know, the mark of the beast is something that has to do with your right hand or forehead that will identify yourself and to conduct all your business. And it's a system in place globally before the beast or the Antichrist declares himself to be God, a person who makes a deliberate decision and swears allegiance to the beast. So you know that this is the mark of the beast that's spoken of in Revelation chapter 13. So we're not even near that right now. So that will be halfway through the tribulation period. We haven't even started the tribulation period because the church is still here. So the church will be raptured before that happens. But those that do not swear to the beast will be cut off from any participation in society and commerce. They won't be able to purchase anything. Again, it's a cashless society, so it will leave them all helpless. I was reading something interesting. There was this tech development. MIT posted an article called Storing Medical Information Below the Skin Surface. So part of this article that talks about the MIT researchers have now developed a novel way to record the patient's vaccine history, storing the data of a pattern of dye invisible to the naked eye. It's delivered under the skin at the same time as the vaccine. In areas where the paper vaccine cards are lost or don't exist at all, electronic databases are unheard of, this technology could be enabled to the rapid anonymous detection of patient vaccine history to ensure that everyone is vaccinated, according to Kevin McHugh, a former MIT postdoc who is an assistant professor at bioengineering at Rice University. So the researchers show that the new dye that consists of this nanocrystals called quantum dots can remain at least 5 years under the skin, where it emits near infrared light and can be detected by a specially equipped smartphone. Research was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Koch Institute support grant from the National Cancer Institute. So this came out of that particular article from MIT. But there is this internet rumor that software founder Bill Gates is funding a secret program to have a microchip implanted under your skin when you are vaccinated with COVID-19. It's not really true. It's not really happening from what other researchers has been telling us. He funded the program to develop the skin tag. Whether or not it's the COVID shot is not known. So, but this is not the mark of the beast. So just be cautious there. It's one of the many possible advances that could function in the future tech as becomes, the mark of the beast, or however that looks out for. Whether it's a scanned item, it's something that's infrared underneath the skin. There's others that include facial recognition, iris scans, palm prints, vein scans, and a whole lot more. So I'm simply pointing this out because, as what was predicted 2,000 years ago in the book of Revelation, we're seeing even just the world leaders calling for this great reset to move toward a global economy, eventually a global government, also predicted by the Apostle John in the book of Revelation. So all this COVID-19 is really accelerating all these trends. So what we see that, in the past, it didn't seem like they had the technology then as we do today. So everything that we're seeing unfolding in the book of Revelation, you can see happening in the near future. So as we close this podcast, just exercise caution, discernment in what you listen to, what you watch. Be careful jumping too quickly to conspiracy theories. Stay informed, but more importantly, stay grounded in the Word. Be that prayer warrior. Be a servant for the Lord. Be a good witness and a good example, pointing people to the Lord. Amen? And that's it for today's update. Until next time, God bless.